Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here together with you. I'm far from my home base, and as was already indicated, I'm so happy to see some white snow. It makes life so much different. Now, I'm invited here to talk a little bit about Singapore as a case study. And I really want to make sure from the beginning that when we talk about talent development and mobility, I would never give Singapore as a role model. It's far too different from what you have here or what I have in my own country. I'm Belgian from origin, although I haven't lived there for quite a while. I'm actually mobile talent, with the emphasis on mobile, I think. But it's an interesting case study. And I'm a teacher. I used to be a teacher in the business schools, using a lot of case studies, and I always kept telling my students, when you talk about case studies, they're not role models, but they're ideas that make you think. And that's the reason why I'm here today. That is actually to make you think about some of the initiatives that have been taken by Singapore in order to stimulate talent development and talent mobility. Now, for the Singaporeans, the case is actually very simple. Singapore is, by the way, it's a bit strange. I don't look like a Singaporean, right? Most Singaporeans have thick black hair and are rather skinny. I just am the opposite. But that gives me a bit of an advantage that although I have lived there for quite a while, that I'm still a bit of this inside outsider. I mean, I can look at it from the outside, give probably also a bit more of a critical view from time to time. And I will be able to answer all your questions without having to refer back to the government. Now, for the Singaporeans, the issue is actually quite simple. Singapore has as its fundamental strategy, or the Singapore government has as its fundamental strategy, if I really strip it down to the essence, to provide full employment at salaries that tomorrow will be higher than today. It's a very simple objective. And in order to achieve that, the government has come to the conclusion that they need to have about 5 to 7% growth of GDP on the average, so that they can pay for retirement, that they can pay for education, that they can pay for transport and all kinds of other things, also a little bit of defense. They need to have that 5 to 7% GDP growth per year. Now, as a simple management teacher, I ask myself the question, how do you get there? What do you do to get that 5 to 7% growth per year in what is an industrialized economy? We're not talking about an emerging market or a developing economy that really comes from nowhere and where the 5 to 7% is perhaps easy to realize. But we're talking about an economy that is industrialized, as I will show in a second, and is a rich country. It's very simple. You can, if you work very hard, can perhaps get 2, maximum 3% of growth out of productivity improvements, out of innovation, out of process improvements, out of productivity improvements. And that, if you want to get 2 to 3%, you have to make sure that also the government does a lot of productivity improvement. You cannot rely on the private sector only. But that doesn't make the count. That doesn't bring you to 5 to 7%. So Singapore has a very simple formula to say, as a good economist, if you want to grow, you add people to capital. You put capital investments together with people, and since we want to have that 5 to 7% of the growth, we need to have talent that joins us. Of course, if you're in a country with no unemployment, that talent has to come from outside. If you're a country that has some unemployment, you can perhaps think about reskilling your people, make sure that you upskill them and that the people who are in unemployment can actually take the jobs that you want to create. But even in a small country, whether it's Estonia, whether it's Singapore, whether it's my own country, Belgium, or any other small country in the world, the challenge is also that even if you would have some unemployment available, that you have that sort of reserve of people that you could add to the economy, that you may not have all the talents that you need, that you actually have to look outside for that talent. And so, if we start the case study today, when I will now go through what what has the government done and how have they tackled the problem, we should keep in mind that the fundamentals underlying reason why Singapore does that is not because they like to have a lot of foreigners joining them, they don't necessarily like me, but they have to the conclusion that to help their own population, they need me.